Okay, today's podcast is another interesting one about spirituality, spirit guides, and intuition. Malaurie Hotier is a psychic and medium that is here to bring a grounded approach to spirituality so you don't go falling into a black hole of fear. Trust me, I've been there. Malaurie sheds light on her own experience in connecting to her gifts and how you can also start to cultivate a connection with your higher self and spirit guides. If you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. My mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello, and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. We have another special episode I'm so excited for today. We have Malaurie Hotier, and she is French.
I am French.
And that is my best attempt to that. And she is a psychic and medium with a very grounded approach. And I have had the personal pleasure of having two sessions with Malaurie. And one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out is because I appreciate the way that you talk about spirituality, because there's a lot of crazy shit out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of crazy shit, we would love to start with like a mental health myth or a spiritual myth.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a ton, but is there anything that comes to mind that feels like on your heart right now?
Yes, so there's actually two I was thinking of this morning, but I can either speak of both or we can just go with one. It doesn't matter. I'll speak of one that just literally happened before I got on, which is the idea, and specifically, it's really huge within the spiritual community that maybe it's like tapping on a on a controversial topic, which it shouldn't be.
Welcome.
But it's I know, but it's like the idea that if antidepressant. I had somebody reach out to me this morning, which is a very dear friend of mine, also a student and a client at the same time, who was just like, I've been like really down, really down, to the point that her therapist was just like, hey, you know, I'm a little concerned about how deep you've gone, like, and she wants to put her on antidepressant. And then her answer to that to me was just like, well, I'm afraid of it. And I was just like, I don't understand. Like, I personally have never been on it, but I know many people who've been incredibly helped by this. And I think there's this idea that if you are like on a spiritual path, you should just like handle your shit on your own. Is it okay to curse in this thing?
Yes.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you know, that you should like just handle your shit on your own. And I'm like, but there's a reason why this is here. Like, and so that's the myth that I think is like kind of like a little, it's off, because I think that, you know, the way I view it is I always tell my clients, I was like, and you're a therapist, so stop me if you think I'm completely off base. But I think that most people navigate between a 0 to a 10, like with maybe like, you know, a 10 being like super excited and happy and 0 being like, But most people are like around like a 4 to a 6 on a daily basis, right? They just kind of like go up and down and up and down. And then maybe sometimes shit happens and they go down to a 2 and then they go back up, and sometimes they go to an 8 or a 10, but most navigate in the middle, right? But sometimes life throws a bone at you or something, that's the wrong expression. Sometimes life throws something at you that's terrible, and then you drop below 0. And I think when you're dropping below 0, you can't catch a breath and you can't get back above water on your own. And that is when I think it's likely very appropriate to just use the help that's handed to you.
Yes.
So that you can get back to like a 2 or 3, so you can breathe and get back on your feet. Then you can just revise that and maybe talk to the person who put you on it and say, okay, I feel better. Can we taper down? But it's just like the idea that you shouldn't. I think that's the thing that's just kind of like a bad spiritual myth, right? Specifically, it's like in the woo-woo community.
Yes. Where do you think that comes from? Like the dark night of the soul? Like you have to go through hell. It's going to be hard. Like
it's
weird.
Bullshit. It's not. It doesn't. No, but I mean, it doesn't have to be. Like I don't know why everybody thinks like. I see that in my comments all the time. I see that in my I just see that like in the people that reach out and everything, or even just the comments when I say something. It's always I'll say something uplifting or like something that's like about the afterlife, and I'm giving them a picture that's actually like no judgment, like no judgment, and like all the things that I have seen. And the one thing that could be negative is the thing that people like pick on, and people that just look at and they attach to it, or they'll go really dark. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like in anything that I said, instead of focusing on the uplifting message, you just twisted it to something that's dark when there was nothing dark to start with. And I see that over and over and over again. And I think it's most of the population. I mean, I'm generalizing because I don't see all the population, obviously. But yeah, so this is kind of like, I don't know if that answered the question. But
yeah,
this is kind of like what I see is just they'll pick on something and just like make it into this mission. I don't know.
Well, I'm wondering if that's like organized religion, history around that of like, there has to be something bad about this, and our brains are wired to seek safety and survival. And so like, where's the threat in this, and I think it's a lot of work. And I think that's what social media can do is kind of, if you have to work hard to see the light, and at the same time, I can understand how exhausting it is putting out light content and then just seeing or feeling that, oh, this can get twisted so quickly from their perspective.
And I mean, truthfully, it's like doesn't happen. I mean, it happens often, but it doesn't affect me. Like, I'm just like, well, like, you are not in a good place, dude. Like,
yeah,
none of it reaches me. Like, none of it really doesn't affect me. Like, I'm just like, I'll reach out or I'll answer something kind because I'm like, you're obviously in a place that is not good. So I have compassion for that, And so, yeah, but when it comes down to, you're right, our brains, I think, are wired to just go towards what we are used to. And it's kind of, like familiar. You have to, it's familiar. So it's like, and also like it's flipping called the algorithm, right? So whatever you like, whatever you focus on, this is what's going to feed you. It's kind of like interesting. Like the algorithm is kind of like your brain in some ways, right?
They made it that way.
Yeah. Right. But it's just people like, oh, like, I just always makes me laugh. People are like, oh, I found your content and I was meant to find it. And I'm like, I'm so thankful you're here. But also you were probably fed my content because you are interested in this. And I'm thankful that it was, but it didn't just happen by magic.
Right. That's a very good point, because I think that's another really good myth, because there's a lot of spiritual creators that say, you found this for a reason. That's the first thing they say when you land on that video. And so,
yeah, no, it's bullshit.
Yes, but I think that's important to say.
Yeah. It is, you have to, and it doesn't mean that the message is not wonderful for them. Like they probably, in some way, maybe it's great. And I get hundreds of messages per week of people who are like, oh my God, like whatever you said really helped me. And I'm grieving and that really helped me. And it's great. But likely they found me because they're grieving and because they've been looking at contents that's related to that. And then I just happened to have a message that's related to that. And they found me and then they connected, right? And then they're going to be fed more of my contents after that, of course. So I think that's kind of like how it goes.
Yeah. Which again, I just think is important to say from someone who's a psychic medium that can be manipulative, and that's not how it works, And again, like, I think your idea of spirituality too, or what spirituality isn't necessarily black and white. It's not good or evil. It's like expansive. Like when you peel back the layer, it's expansive. And I think when people are on social media and us as humans, we're like, well, no, but tell me if it's black or white. Tell me if it's meant for me or not. Tell me if this is bad or good.
They really need to. It's like like I don't answer, and I know it frustrates people, but I have made that choice not to answer the question of good and evil in my comments because I get that all the time. And I'm like, so you want me to explain to you good and evil in 3 sentences? No, thank you.
Right.
Or in my DMs, I'm like, so you want me to make sense of life for you in a DM? No, thank you. And I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm just like, I will go deep into those topics, but like I do that in my master classes. Actually, I had one last year that was about like reincarnation and past lives and things like that. And there was an entire class that was just about good and evil. But it gives me chance to peel the layers and really explain my thinking, because otherwise people are going to pick something I said and then twist it. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. And I can't make it better for you. I can't. There's shit going on in the world I can't explain, and I don't want to explain that to you. Not the way I view it, because you might not like it or might not agree with it, and it's not going to help you. Like, so I can't explain good and evil to you in the comments. I just can't do it.
Yeah. When people want answers outside of themselves, and I think in the spiritual world, you can easily do that, or it can easily lend itself. Well, you are more powerful than me, or you are all knowing or more knowing than me. So you tell me the answer to things. And yes, we need guidance on those, but we all have access to that on some degree.
You know, I agree. And I think it's like, you're right. It's kind of like, it's sort of, it's a little bit of a hierarchy, but it's people are in pain, right? And so they're looking for answers. But you're right, they're looking for answers outside of themselves. And I don't like to be, and it's inevitable. Is that a word? Inevitable? Sometimes I confuse French words with English words. Inevitable. Thank you. And it's 30 years here, and I still some words. I'm just like, I don't know how to say this.
That's great.
Either way, I think it will happen automatically because of social media, and it's just people put you on this pedestal, which I try not to be on. I try to just basically my goal is to empower people, right? It's to bring them back to themselves and to get them to find the answer within themselves. And so I'm not always going to give them the answer that they're seeking for. And I run my readings the exact same way. Like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm not your guru. I don't want to be. Like, you know, I understand why people create cults, right? It's just like, it's so easy. And I'm like, I refuse to do that. I want to empower who you are to find the answer within yourself. Like, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Nor do I have all the answer. And sometimes I can't make sense of the pain you're going through. Like, I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. I can have compassion for it and empathy. Like, and I do, right? And it's like, I'll engage with people. They'll reach out in my DMs, and some people are in a lot of pain, and I will always try to answer those if they get flagged for me. But I'm not going to give you endless amount of time and energy that is going to deplete me to help you feel better. I will have compassion, and I will send you all the love in the world, but I can't answer that for you, right? So I know sometimes it feels harsh, but it's like, I think it empowers people to just really tune into their own selves. Which is the goal, right?
Right. Well, what I'm hearing you say is you can't save someone from their grief or pain, but they have to go into them. I mean, that's the thing with therapy too, right? I can't solve all your problems, right?
No.
But I can ask the right questions or kind of lead you internally as best as I can, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's that hard thing, I think, with anything spiritual. I mean, any guru, any cult, it's when you put somebody above you and your knowing.
Right. And I think it's like, it's more powerful for people. They might not like it, and it might not be immediate, and they might not even continue to follow me after that. And that's okay. I don't care. I do not care, because eventually this is going to be more important for you than if somebody gives you the answer right off the bat.
Yes.
Or pretend to give you the answer. It will be. And so, yeah. And if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And would you kind of explain how you work, how you talk to spirit guides, what are spirit guides? Because I think you have really good boundaries within that and in your sessions as well.
I mean, you've done sessions with me, so it's like I have like a way of doing things, which is when the client comes in, like I will open up a safe container where I'll call my guides to come in and my clients' spirit guides to come in as well. And my guides, their guides all kind of like communicate to me. My guides help me translate sometime what other guides are saying, because I don't know everybody's language or the way they communicate and what they're showing up like. And then it's always for my client's greater good or higher self, right? And so I make sure that happens. And the problem is like, not the problem. The thing is about when it's for your greater good or your higher self, it doesn't mean it's always for the things that you think is the best at the moment. And so I always tell people, like, I am not in the business of prediction. Like, if you're coming here for me to tell you if you're going to have 2.5 kids, and that's it, it won't be, I mean, I can answer those questions, but the problem is, And I will answer those questions at time because it's what a person is here. And I'm like, great, but that's a waste of money. And here's why. Because at any moment of any time, you can blink the wrong way and take a different path. And so what I saw suddenly is different, right? Because you didn't follow straightforward. So I was also always tell people, this is the most likely scenario based on the path that you're currently on. But if you take door B instead of door A, right after we hang up, right? This is why, like, the way I work is it's more beneficial if you are asking for what's for the betterment of my soul, right? Or like
purpose?
I have a lot of people, kind of like a purpose. Like a purpose is a good question. It's kind of like vague, and I can answer those questions, and I will. Because people also have this idea that a purpose is like this grand thing when it's not. Like sometimes it's simply like your purpose in this life is to just simply find joy. And people are like, okay. Like they I'm like, it's not everybody's purpose to be Mother Teresa, right? It really truthfully is not. And so, you know, in readings it's tricky because we'll go through like a general thing like that. And then also I can really tune into things that are just like, you are at a crossroad and which path is better for your soul. And actually I love those questions because they get really clear answers, much more than if you're like, I want to know about my future. Well, okay, so do I. I'd love to know about your future, but like there's 1,000 possibilities in front of you. You'll get more out of your money if you have questions about a direction, like you're struggling to go towards, right? And then I can guide you toward that very well and give you the steps to take to get towards it, or see if there's any like red flags or things that are going to come up in your way. So yeah, it's basically like the way I work is the more the client is involved into their own life and not passive in it, then the clearer the message is going to get, right? Because your guides are only going to care as much as you do.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense too, of like being connected to yourself or grounded in yourself, like not a reassurance, but more of a knowing of self. It just makes more sense. There can be more clarity in that. And the more you know yourself, the more you're in tune, the more you befriend, love, care, kind for yourself, like be kind towards yourself.
And that's why I go back to like, it's all about empowering the person. And I understand that it's like, it's not when people think of like a psychic or a medium or something, they're not thinking that. They're thinking, I'm going to go and I'm going to be told my future. A lot of time is how people work. And I'm like, maybe, maybe like, but I'm about 70, you know, between 60 and 70% accurate if you're coming with things specifically like that. But, you know, and I also kind of like tune into people that have crossed over, things like that. So there's a little more into the reading than just simply tell me about what's ahead.
Do past lives you feel fun. Like,
those have fun. Most have so much fun.
Does that, okay, you talk about accuracy for the future is like 67%, whatever you said. Past lives, that's going to be 100 though, right?
Yeah, the past lives are amazing because the way I do things is like, it's not a regression, right? And so I don't, I have a pill in my back that's actually bugging me. I don't work with past life in a sense that it's like I don't regress people into something. And so the past life will show up for me if the person's spirit guides are willing to show them to me. And usually when those happen, they are specifically because it's going to better or answer questions that my clients has in their life right now. So I've had some insane past life that showed up for people that I'm like, huh? I'm like, okay, I'll just pass that on. It makes no sense to me. And the person is like, yeah, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. And I'm like, well, I'm glad because I had no idea. So, you know, it's one of those things like, it's always great, no matter what you do. If you do a past life regression and you go to a hypnotherapist or something like that, always go in with questions. Don't just go in because you just want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. So that's like to get clarity.
Yeah, because it's like, it will help you understand. If you go with questions, you will understand yourself better, which I think is why you should want to do past lives. A lot of people that go and want to do past life because they think it would be fun to see who they were. But I can guarantee you, most of us were not that important.
Yes.
Right? People always want to discover, like, was I this great person? Was I this most of them had a really boring and simple life or horrible life at that time.
Yeah.
So be careful what you want to unearth, right? Like, so that's why if you go with a specific question, your guides will make sure that you get the answer that's going to be helpful. So if you're shown something that's maybe not the greatest, it's to answer your questions, not because it can create sometime more trauma than not. So what's the point of that?
Yeah. And I think that, again, that's what I appreciate about your approach is that kind of filtering through of like, I mean, you don't know what's going to be triggering to someone or traumatic in some ways, but at the same time, I think you do your best at like, okay, how do I filter this is, for their highest good? And again, that container and those boundaries, I think, are really important, because there's a lot of spiritual people that can be like, well, your life is going to change in 3 years and good luck, because you're, like it can be, it could be really traumatic and ungrounding in a lot of ways.
And also it's, again, people will attach to the things that I said and remember what they want to remember. And sometimes you're just like, out of all what I said, that's the one thing you remember?
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible to me, right? It's just like, why? So, yeah.
That's funny. I mean, when I think about our sessions, I've seen some other spiritual people. I tend to do that too. Like something, I'm like, oh, but they said this. Oh, but they said this. I think it's because I don't fucking know. I think it's the lost feeling. I think it's a lost feeling in that moment and trying to reach for some certainty. Oh, this makes me teary.
Well, yeah. And we all want certainties, but this is why you can't have it. So it's like, because honestly, we don't know. We don't know what's ahead. We really do not, right? It's like, I can have the best intention to do something today that's very specific, but all I can do is the steps to get to that, because at the end of the road, I don't know. I could just like want to go and do something that's outside of the house, and I make all the steps. I get ready. I do all the things. I put clothes on. I do all the things. I get in my car. I leave, and there's a major accident, and like I can't get anywhere. All the roads are blocked, and then I have to go home.
Yes,
that's like out of my control, right?
Right.
And so I think people get really, really boggled down, like on. They get so paralyzed by the things they cannot control. They get so paralyzed, and then they do nothing.
Yeah.
And then they do nothing.
Yeah. I think what you talk about is the pain that people go through, and then they're wanting that certainty. And what you're saying is like, nothing is certain in life, No,
nothing is certain in life. And so what happens is that people get frozen. So many people, it's actually probably one of the number one questions when people don't come in to me because they want to talk about departed loved ones or somebody has lost. Usually the number one question is always like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. And people are not stuck. They're just afraid.
Yeah. Fear.
It's fear.
Fear.
Yeah. People are not stuck. They're scared.
Yeah. I think too, like, it's almost like they imprison, and I've been here and I've been there, but it's like they imprison themselves in that fear. And there's one way this is going to turn out, and it's bad, or there are no options. Like that mindset or that belief is what keeps people stuck. And I think the same thing when you look at like the spiritual stuff online or the TikToker or whatever, that's like, oh, well, they told me this is going to be bad. I remember coming to you for my second session. I was like, girl, I'm going to Hawaii without my kids for like a week, and this spiritual crazy girl is telling me there's going to be a giant earthquake in California. Like, I can't leave my kids. I was like freaking out.
Was you?
That was me.
You said, I remember that. I remember. It was, see? I mean, do I need to say more?
Right.
Point proven, right?
Yeah. But I remember the fear that got me was so intense, and it was like, what is happening to me? Like, it just felt so weird and so ungrounding. I was going to cancel a all-paid trip to Hawaii.
How was your trip? How was your trip?
It was great.
Exactly.
And no earthquake.
No.
But it was that discernment that I gave away. I gave away my power in a lot of that, and I let fear kind of take over and create this narrative that like put me in a really bad place because someone predicted an earthquake. Like, It sounds silly.
Fear sells. That's what I always say. Fear sells. So it's like a lot of the people will show up and they are trying to freak people out because then it will engage people. That's all there is. And it worked, right? It works. I mean, you're a very smart woman. You're
right.
Like, you're a very successful woman. You're a therapist. You have all those things going for you, and you still got stuck because of that. And you're almost like, we're like, well, is it true? And it's not. Then people are like, oh, my intuition. I'm like, your intuition is not telling you anything.
Yeah.
That's not intuition. Fear and intuition do not live in the same sentence. One has nothing to do with the other. And so then you get stuck, right? You get stuck because you're like, oh, but yeah, I see that all the time. People get stuck. They get stuck, and they're stuck because they're scared. And then when I try to explain that to people, one of the things, the feedback that I get is, oh yeah, well, what if you like, I'm in a horrible situation, and yada yada. And people also misunderstand taking a step as like extracting themselves from a bad situation. But it's not. Let's say you are in an incredibly abusive situation, which is horrifying and horrible, and you need out, right? And people get stuck because they're like, well, I need to leave and I can't. I don't have money. I don't have this. I'm trapped. Great. I understand that, and it's horrifying, and it might take you 3 years to extract yourself. But there are things you can do to make sure that you don't collapse in the meantime. What can you do? What is the tiny, tiny little step that can just one, and then the other one, and the other one, right? And so people think big instead of like, think microscopic steps. It's okay.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's what fear is. Fear is the big picture. Fear is like, all these things have to change, and that gets overwhelming, and then it's like the frozen feeling. Yeah. And so again, it's that invitation of like, what if you believed also that, okay, if this is big, this is real, this exists for you. Yeah. All these things are hard. And what's one small thing you can do if you believed that there's another possibility that exists for you without this fear, And what would that feel like going into it? Because I do think people get stuck on that, the bigger things or the logical things in some ways. It's like, you can't just like pick up and go. But what are some things you can free yourself from in the fear, in the internal piece of that, in the emotional piece of that? Because that's going to carry you farther than you just leaving with no money.
Or leaving for, absolutely. I mean, there's many different reasons. Sometimes it's not just money. There's more than that, right? It's like, but no, I agree. I agree exactly with you.
Malaurie, when did you know you had gifts? Tell me about your family. Like, give me the deets.
Basically, it's like my whole family. Well, on my maternal side of the family, my family is incredibly psychic and has a lot of gift. So my great grandmother on my great grandmother on my mom's side, like my grandpa's mom, was like really. I mean, maybe you could even say witch. I always use those terms like very lightly, but
I love
during the war, like, so France, right? Imagine France, north of France, poor, really, really poor, World War II, no food, living in the north, under German occupation mostly, like really kind of like rations, all those things, no medicine, like living in a tiny little small village. And so she used to make like potions out of herbs and stuff for her neighbors, right? And so like already, like, how did she know that? Like, she was uneducated, didn't know how to read, right? But that she just, all those things. And then passed on, like, my grandpa was really intuitive. And then my mother is really, really intuitive and really kind of like spiritually inclined and can see spirit in the whole thing. She's blocked most of it, but she really can. And so what happens is, this has happened as far as I can remember. I remember being maybe 4 and astral traveling and freaking out because I didn't know what it was. And I remember one time I was in bed, my parents were in the living room, we lived in Paris, and they were in the living room, and I felt myself floating off and then drop back into my body, and I just freaked out, and I ran into the living room to tell my parents what happened, and my mom didn't believe me. She was just like, you just don't want to go to sleep. Like, then just sit there on a chair in the kitchen and just until you decide you're tired enough, because I'm not dealing with this with you tonight. But really truthfully, now that I look back, that's what was going on. I just kept lifting out, right? And then I didn't know what was going on. And so I now always saw things, but I just thought it was kind of like the way it goes, right?
Right.
And then also with my mother, she was always very, very a little bit like to see beyond what is. So if we encountered somebody new, she was never asking me how I felt about that person based on like what they looked like, but it was always about how emotionally and how energetically I connected to them. She was always like, how did you feel on this person? What do you think?
Wow.
And I always, it was always, so I always had to just be a little more. It just had to be a little more like, so I could connect to their energy. And she didn't even have the words for it. She just kind of like would ask me those questions. So I would always look a little below the surface, right?
Yeah.
And so literally like you can't judge a book by its cover was like the motto of my childhood.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what happened always. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Do you know if she was trying to feel out if you had abilities or she knew and she wanted to cultivate that? What do you think
I don't even think either one of them. I think it was just kind of like how she sees the world.
I see.
That's what it is. Like she feels people and energetically and then reads them, which is not really fair to the people, but she reads them in 3 seconds and then she'll be like, yes or no, thank you.
Or no. Yeah.
Like very quickly. So she was trying to, I think like instill that in me and the ability to just ask questions. But I don't know if she was like, oh, she has a gift and I want to nurture that or not, because she never even called herself gifted in any ways, right? Like she doesn't call herself that. And then if you fast forward, like in my life, when I was about, I think it was like around 12 or 13, this is when it started. I was just like, what the heck is going on? Like my parents, and I did not know that until I was in my 30s. Wow. And I'm 15. Well, actually more than that. My parents used to have seances in the living room every Thursday night or every other Thursday night, I forgot now, with one of their friends. But I didn't know that's what they were doing. I had no clue. And so they would have a seance in their living room. My mom, that friend, and then my dad, and we lived in this big house in the northern part of France at that point, and I had the only bedrooms downstairs. And then and the friend will leave, and then whoever they called, because they called that spirit week after week and after week, would just come into my room. The same exact one every week. And they would come into my room, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I remember the first time it happened, I felt my bed moved, and I was just like, what's happening? And then it stopped. And then it just kept progressing. And to the point, it's like I would see this man come in, like appear in front of my bed and sit down. And then I would put the covers above my head and then just wait and say, please go away. And then eventually I would pull the cover off and then he would leave. And then I got really good at it to covering myself up before he even came. And then I would just like undo the cover, turn on the light, and then he would disappear. And that lasted for, a long time, like months or even a year. And then eventually, I remember one time I was just like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then he wanted me to help find something. I think it was like he wanted to help find his son. And I was just like, I don't know where your son is. I don't know what you want. But as soon as I started engaging with him, things started becoming even worse. Like I started having dreams with him in it. And then my mom started finding me in a hallway in the middle of the room, in the middle of the night. I would be like walking through the hallway, like almost like sleepwalking. And she would come down the stairs because she would hear me walk. And she'd be like, what is going on? And so a couple of times, like I woke up when she was there. A couple of times she brought me back to bed until one day, like literally, I went all the way down to the garage because there's garages underneath the houses in France. I went all the way down in the garage and then woke up. And I was just like, pitch black in the middle of a garage. And I was just like, what is happening? And so, and in all that dreams, every time it was him dragging me and pulling me through this forest and like pushing me forward to try to and we were running away from a mob of people. And so, and eventually one day it stopped, completely stopped. And I was just like, okay, maybe I made all that up. And so I just let it go. And I didn't really tap into anything until I was in my late 20s. when I was doing a yoga teacher's training, and the teacher there kind of like saw something in me and sort of like pushed me until it woke up. And it was,
wow.
I love her to death for that, but at the same time, it could have been done in a more gentle manner. But nonetheless, it just guided me to where I am now. But maybe about 10 years ago, so I was talking to my mom and I was telling her about the experiences I had when I was younger. She's like, I don't know what's going on. And she was like, well, I didn't know what they were doing. I had no idea. She was like, well, and then she told me, and I was just like, are you shitting me?
Right.
I was like, are you serious? I thought it was crazy. She was like, I didn't know why you were sleepwalking. And I was just like, really? Like, nobody, like, why didn't you ask? And so she explained to me all this thing that was going on. And eventually they stopped because the spirit they kept calling upon it started coming in when not called upon, and take kind of like, and my mom would go into trance.
Oh, wow.
And so she freaked out. And so they broke the bond. And then he disappeared. And then I no longer saw it. And so I told her what I saw, and I compared to what she would see, and it was the exact same person. And I was just like, well,
wow,
that was not good. It was a poet from the Middle Ages.
Is that why? Like, why did they keep calling him? Do you know?
Because they thought it was fun, and they were stupid. I had no idea. They thought it was fun. And like, it's because my dad is into all those things. And my dad has zero, like, he's not gifted. He wants to be, and he pretends to be, but he's not at all. And so that intrigues him. But what the problem is, so he used my mom because my mom really is. And she got roped into this by those two morons. And then here you go.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the story of it. And then I didn't really do anything with any of this until a few years back, really, truthfully, until about, it'll be like 3 years, I think. It was like 2020 or something, where during COVID, actually, I started, started to talk about some of the things I was seeing online, but with no intention of doing readings at all. It just kind of like, I was just like, okay, I see all the things, maybe that can help someone, right?
Yeah.
And one day my wife asked me, she goes, so have you ever wondered to why you have those gifts? And I was just like, actually, I haven't.
Yeah.
And she was like, because I'm just wondering if maybe there's more to it, right? And like in typical therapist form, because she's a therapist.
Yeah.
In a typical therapist, like, ask questions instead of telling what to do, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered? And so I started questioning, and she was like, well, maybe you might want to investigate this. And so, yeah, she just found this amazing woman, Amelia Travis, who is an incredible business coach, incredible. And then we did like a 3 months like intensive with her one-on-one to just kind of like help me sort of like come up with ideas for this. And then they both encouraged me to start doing one-on-one. And I was just like, I don't think I can do this. They were like, just try it. And so because we own a yoga studio in Mission Viejo, in California, I started talking to some of my students about it that I was comfortable with. Yeah. And I was just like, I'll just charge a little bit, right? So I started doing it on one-on-one, and I was like, okay, well, that works. I can do this, right? I'm very good at this. And so then the next step was like, can I do it on Zoom? And so I did it on Zoom, and I was just like, oh, I can do this. And so then I just built up ever since.
Wow.
That's about it.
Is there any difference for you in person or in Zoom? Like, if you have to reach more to connect, or no?
No, I actually don't like it in person.
Is it too much?
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. Because I see energy right on top of everything that I receive. So when I see it through a screen, it's fine. Whatever. I can just like let it be what it is. But when I see the energy of the person like right in person in front of me, and it's like I have to like triple block myself to not take it on, it makes it it's harder. It's really is harder for me. So I don't enjoy doing it one-on-one in person at all.
And what, like, I'm sure you have to ground and I assume like turn it on and off. Like, what does your daily life look like in family or being around people? Are you exhausted all the time?
No. If I work a lot, I eventually become exhausted and I have to take a break. And so, again, thanks to my wife, she does my entire schedule. And so every about 6 weeks, she gives me a week off from readings. Like she just puts it down. Like, so this week, for example, I don't do any readings because I need to recharge, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, being around people, no, I don't get, like, I'm fairly grounded just in general. So I don't, I know it sounds kind of like hypocritical because I'm always telling people like, ground yourself. But literally it's kind of like, I am mostly just grounded. And so things don't really affect me. And I have a really strong communication with my own spirit guides and my own guides. And so they are on it.
Yeah.
Right? Like at all time, I feel very protected and very guided.
Yeah.
Constantly.
There's a lot of trust you have in that.
Yeah, I don't really question things very much. I just kind of like follow, you know?
Wow.
And I find out is the best guidance is the one you don't know you're being guided.
Damn. How do you do that?
You
That's
just let it go.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like you don't have to be a psychic or a medium or anything like that to just do that. It's literally, I think some people are more prone to than others, right? I don't have a lot of trauma in my life, so I'm very privileged when it comes down to that as well. But also like the upbringing I had maybe, but also it's just like, I think I'm really prone to just kind of like not really attach too much. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like, money, no money.
That. Yeah.
A big place, not a big place. It's great. All of that is great, but it's like I'm not attached to anything really, truthfully.
Yeah.
And so I just follow. Like my entire life has been that. Ever since I was like a teenager, like how I got to this country, all of this, I just been just steps.
I love that.
I just took. They were in front of me. I was like, well, I'll just go here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just go here. Maybe I'll just go here. And I never really kind of like, so I have a goal to where I want to go, but then once it's there, I'm like, how I get there, we'll see. Do I get there? Yeah, we'll see. I'm not attached to it.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of how to live a happy life is.
Yeah.
To not have this type of attachments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And non-attached.
Because things change, right? And what is the expression is the only constant is change.
I also have like a visual of like the more grounded you are, the more like spiritual you are. Like it goes both ways. You know what I mean? It's just like the deeper you are, the higher you are.
Yeah. Well, because it connects you from the crown all the way down, right? But if you're not grounded, it stops right here. And then you come from up here, and then that's your brain.
Yeah, right. And that's fear.
So, right.
I mean, there's logic there, but
grounding comes from like the seat of the soul technically is in the solar plexus, right? And so to reach that, you have to have like the energy drawing down. Otherwise, you don't. And then so you're not connecting to this. So when I look at people's energy, a lot of people walk around in life, they literally look like they're split.
Wow.
Right? They look like their legs to the solar plexus is here, and then the rest of their body is here. And then the heart is sort of like in between, but not really flowing either. So then most people function from up here.
Yeah. And is that how you see it? Do you see it in like shapes or colors or what?
No, it's not in colors. I mean, I can see colors, but colors are just colors. Like the chakra colors are just kind of, they vary really. And if you look at, if you Google like chakras, when the first chakra, like they change, people have different idea. There's different like diagrams of what the colors look like, right? So except the heart is always green, but everything else sort of like changes.
Interesting.
Like they'll have like a brown sometime on the first, but sometimes it's red and sometimes it's orange, like whatever. So colors, I always tell people like don't attach to that very much.
Yeah.
Like mostly just kind of feel. But I just see it as like a shape around the body, right? And then literally it would feel like it's truncated. Like people that like truncated. Like they're here and then there's like energy here and then energy here and there's no connection.
Right.
And it's kind of it's interesting to see, but at the same time you're like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
This must not be fun to be in your body.
Yes.
Because you're not in your body when that happens, right? You forget you have legs.
Yes.
I always tell my students, like, don't forget you have a bottom part of your body. It's not up here. It's like, actually the most important part are your legs. Because with your legs, you can't move forward in life, right? So you got to ground.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, obviously I don't have the same gifting, but in therapy, I get frustrated real easy. I'm like, oh, you're just here. Like, drop down for a second. Drop down for a second. Like, so when you say that split, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know I felt that in myself, obviously, as well.
You get frustrated with the clients and where they're at, and maybe like you can't.
My frustration is kind of my cue of like, if I like kind of tune out or get bored, I'm like, ugh, like an eye roll. It's because I don't feel them connected and I want to connect. So
yeah,
it's very interesting. So I can't like make them connect for me, but it's like, oh, they're in their head. How can we drop down a little bit and connect them? And would that feel better for them or not? I mean, or would that feel scary? But it's like tuning into my own body to feel that in them.
Correct. Yeah. I think, and do you think that when that happens to you is because then you become judgmental? And I mean, it's normal. Like, we're all human beings, right? Like, so you tap it, you're staying from here, right? So then suddenly what they're telling you, you're just like, eye rolled, and you're like, God, like we've been together for 10 years and you still don't know that shit?
Yes.
But it's normal. You're a human person, right? Like, therapists are human. They can't. So then when you drop it, you can go more from like a soul-centered empathy and be like, oh, let me meet you where you are at.
Yeah.
Instead of like judgment, right? You take it away from the brain.
Yes,
and drops it into more intuition and guidance, right?
Yeah. And like when you can be non-judgmental of judgment or of things, there can be that curiosity. Like, again, that's for me, it's my cue. It's like, well, I can't be fucking mad at this person, you know, like, I can't come on, girl. But I'm like, oh, there's something in me that I'm like, what? What is, you know, needs to be kind of connected in that.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Okay. One, I think I just want to touch on spirit guides before we end.
Sure.
I feel like, can spirit guides change? Like, do they show up randomly? Do you have like a group together all the time? What is your experience? What have you seen? I know it can't be black and white, and so I want to be really careful with that.
Yes, absolutely. So, they can't change. So we have like a minimum of 3, right? Okay. And there's different sort of like guides. There are spirit guides, mostly like the spirit guides I like to call like the being of lights, right? The being of lights are guides or energies that have been with you since the beginning of the birth of your soul. And so they know you better than you know yourself, right? This is why like when you're trying to, when people are like, no, I want to go this way. And your guides are like, it's better this way, go this way. And then you're like, no, this way. They're like, fine. We have all the time in the world. You'll get to try this again at some point. So go right ahead. But those souls are souls that never took a body here on Earth, right? They were never a human body. But they might have incarnated in an Earth-like planet somewhere within another solar system, like millennials ago, right? At some point. Yeah. So they kind of understand, and then they just no longer need to incarnate, and then here they are for you. There's a minimum of 3. There's much more than that because they have different skill sets. They are, and the guides that you need when you're little versus the guides you need when you're an adult are very different, right? And so like sometime like when we are very young, some of those spirit guides are more like the babysitting role, like making sure that you don't kill yourself, so like you don't strike that. Making sure like you don't run across the street because that's not your destiny in this life, right? And you don't get hit by a truck. Something simple, right? So they kind of like to protect you some ways, but then they evolve. It evolves, like the roles in your life evolve. And so you have those like incredible beings that it's just pure vibrational energy. And then sometimes there are guys that are like our ancestors, right? And so now and again, it's like people love to argue with me. They're just like, oh yeah, well, my grandmother is a guide. I'm like, ultimately, like if you want to believe she is, there's no harm in that. Like, I don't know why you're arguing with me. We're literally talking about things that no one can see. No one has any proof. So if it makes you feel better to say that your grandmother is your guide, you go right ahead. I'm just only talking from my own experiences to tell you that why I don't think it's possible. But you don't have to believe me. I have no attachment to any of this, right? So here's why grandparents or even parents cannot be guides. Because by the essence of a guide has to be able to let you have your own free will. And when people knew you, when souls knew you, it's very hard for them to detach from that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But also on top of everything else, it's like, let's say your grandmother passed and she's been gone for 20 years. She's still going through whatever is going on for her in the afterlife.
Busy.
to be a guide, unless she came in and was already this incredibly elevated soul, she will have to ask to become that. She will have to learn how to become that. It would take a long time. And so that's one of the reasons why. But also, the way I mean, like, ancestors can be your spirit guides is like somebody 6, 7, 8 generations down, like back, right? 6, 7, 8 generation back from you, that maybe wants to guide you. Or it could also be somebody that you knew from a past life, like a soul that you knew from a past life.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That knows you very well, and that past life was 5, 6, 7 past life, like lives ago. And that soul has taken on the role of your guide. And those souls can sometimes reincarnate. So this is why it's tricky. This is why I don't argue with when people are like, my grandmother is my guide.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know your grandmother, and I don't know what type of life they've had before, because maybe they incarnated with you like 10 lives ago and decided and became a guide for you all those lives, and decided in this life they would come in real life to help you. It's a possibility. I don't flipping know.
Right.
And so, but those are more like the ancestor guides that we have.
Yeah.
And then there's like archangels and things that are tricky because people like see them on the biblical side, and those are not. And the archangels are like the like almost like ascended masters, right? Ascended masters are anybody that became enlightened either on earth or somebody else, somewhere else, that are no longer incarnated, and they just don't help like one person. They're just for everyone,
like the collective,
to tap into the collective, right?
Yeah.
And so archangels, I don't know how else to call them, but they're not like the biblical archangels. Like, I still call them by those names, but have nothing to do with like organized religion. They're simply souls that have been there since the beginning of time, basically.
Right.
They're part of source, right? They're part of source. They're like just energies that have pulled from source, that are just become those all-knowing beings. And I can tell you from experience.
Guide you? Yeah. Like, how do you?
Yeah, they do. I have one specifically. But here's the thing. It's like, they're not always there, and they can be incredibly frustrated, and they are not gentle. And so I don't think they guide
like,
everyone.
what the hell are you doing?
No, dude, like, I argue with mine all the time, and I'm always like, seriously? But the thing is, it's like, so they are not gentle. They guide very harshly. And this is why I don't think that they step into everybody's life, because you have to be able to just listen, without, like, the guidance is sort of like a kick this way.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to be able not to go, no, like, to just go with it. Because often for me it happens, and I'm like, I get into it, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm like, I don't care. I'll just follow this way. Apparently it's the way to go. Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so they can be like a little harsh at times.
And does that,
those energies can be.
Yeah. Does that like guide you in every aspect of your life? Like, it's been
every aspect.
Wow.
It's one of those energy is definitely what I would call one of my main spirit guides, even if part of, like, I have like a team of, like, and it sounds like, even when I hear myself, I'm like, dude, it sounds so crazy, but it's my truth. It's my truth. Like, I know I'm like grounded, have a grounded approach. Like, I'm not like totally without thinking that this is so ironic, right? It's like, I talk about a very grounded approach, then I talk about things that to most people are going to be like, are you good? But it's my fucking truth. It's the way I lead my life, right? So I have a team of like 12 guides that I've had most of my life that have all manifested, that I call them like the Council of 12. And then I have like what I like to call an archangel, which really like one of those really, really old energy that is constantly there.
Wow.
Constantly there every day. And my wife and I always jokes about it.
Like, oh, he's back again.
Like, no, we always joke about it. She was like, what is he saying? I'm just like, well, this. She's like, all right. But the thing is, like, with this type of energy that's all-knowing and so incredibly powerful, you gotta be really in tune and not afraid, because they will answer the call. They really would. They will really answer the call. And when they answer the call, it just is big.
Yeah.
And so if you're not ready for it, They would just be like, okay, fine, boom.
Wow.
And you're like, holy shit. Okay, I wasn't fully prepared. And they're like, well, you ask. Here we are.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But also one of the things, Jen, that people don't realize, it's like with, not archangels, but with spirit guides in general, is that people think that they have to be like those beings that you just like, oh, thank you so much. And that you don't. Like, I yell at mine all the time. Like, you can argue. They're not just there. It's a mutual benefit, right? Like, it's so you work for them, they work for you, but it's like you're a team. And so I argue with mine all the time.
Again, I think what you're calling people into is that empowerment to be invited into a conversation versus like, I guess, blindly going, right? I think there's trust, but there can be conversation around things before.
Yes.
Like, I have no choice in this kind of thing.
But that's true. And then also what it is like with spirit guides is that when you incarnate into this body, right, you were shown from the life that you wanted, you were shown 1,000 different possibilities. Like, you picked a family, you were like, okay, I'm going to come here. This looks like either it was because you want to reincarnate within the same family line, or because that it's going to give you the opportunity to experience what it is that you want to experience in this life. Things that maybe you're like, I didn't experience that last time. I want to feel this, right? And then based on that, they'll give you 1,000 different paths that you could take. So you have all that information, and they kind of know also, but they don't really care which one you're gonna go on. Like, they're just like, well, either one of those is a possibility, right? It's like, it's fine. And so you can, but they know, they kind of like, they know they were there when you made all those choices.
And they're trying to guide you into that, like, kind of like, okay, this is why you came here kind of thing. Like, this is a part of it.
Yeah. But also it's like, there's also this free will thing that us human beings have, and they can't interfere with that. Yeah. And so they're just like, well, here we go. Yeah. This is like you, and it's like that moments where you can rejoin the path that you were supposed to be on, and some you don't. And then here we go. That's all there is, right? This is why if you just step out of the way, and people confuse stepping out of the way with having no willpower, which is not the case at all. So it's a fine line. It's a discussion. It's a conversation.
What does that look like for you? Are you in meditation a lot, or are you just like tuning in?
I know. I'm outing myself. Not at all. Not at all. I am usually fairly present at all times. Like, I call it like my like, I joke with my wife because she's just like, what are you thinking of? I'm like, actually, right now, nothing. There was not a thought in my brain. And she's like, fuck. Because I call it like my nothing box.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, actually, one of my friends always jokes, he's like, my nothing box. He's like, I have a nothing box. But then people try to come in and decorate it. And I'm like, just leave it empty.
Yes.
But it's kind of like, so when you are able, so because I'm so fully present in the moment, I wish I could teach how I hear, but I don't know how to do it. I can teach about spirit guides all day long. I can teach about the concept of it and help people connect to their own guides, but I can't teach you how to hear it very clearly, because if you can't get out of the way, you can't really fully hear it. And so I just kind of like, just go wherever. My whole life has been this way.
Yeah. And when you say hear it, it's an audible. Like, what is your experience in that?
Yeah, it's all of the above. It's audible. I'll feel like an energetic push, or sometimes it's just kind of like I'll step one step in front of the other, right? It's like I follow the sign without realizing I do.
Wow.
Right? It's how I came to this country. It's like, it was just like, I've always known since I was little I will end up in America. I always knew that. Wow. And I always did. And then when I was little, I always used to tell my mom, yeah, I'll go to America and I'll marry a man named Steve, and I'll be an au pair. And I didn't even know what an au pair was. And I was just like, and who's
8. Steve?
That was my first husband.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's what I married. And so, and then it's how I came here. And I just kind of like, so I don't know. I just follow what's ahead. But it's getting out of the way is really the biggest thing. If us as humans, we were able to do that, to sort of like not think that everything has to be super easy, right? But sometimes when things don't go according to what we want, then just redirect somewhere else.
Yeah. Go with the flow, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a dumb sentence, but it's true. But it's true. It's like, it's overly like a go with the flow. But it's true, man. It's true.
It's true.
Go with the flow.
So true. Go with the flow.
100%. I don't know if that answers your questions, but
I love it. Malaurie. Okay, tell people where to find you, what you got going on. Tell us all the things, how to book a session, master classes.
Sure. So pretty much the best thing to do is go onto my website. Like it's so Malaurie, Malaurie, psychic.com. And you can just go on that website and all the information will be on it. Now, I have a lot of guided meditation that you can download, which those are kind of like fun. And I do workshops and master classes. I have one coming up on spirit guides, but I think this will air after that. So forget about it. But I always do workshops and things like that. But for when it comes down to one-on-one sessions, I'm fairly booked, but I release things every 3 months. So my next release is May 1st at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it really is 1 p.m. because we sell out within like 20 minutes. And so people are always like, well, I tried to log on and, like it was 3 p.m. I was just like, well, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And so I realize it's not for everyone to just have an alarm and just log into it, but that is kind of like how we release. So the best way to do it is also to be on my Instagram, which is at Malaurie Psychic. All my handles, like my YouTube is Malaurie Psychic, my TikTok is Malaurie Psychic, but my Instagram account is the one where on my broadcast channel, I would announce my cancellations. I would announce, here you go, it's live. Go ahead and book, all of those. So it's kind of like how I cater a little more to that.
Yes, I love that. So, well, I've seen you twice and I've had 2 of my friends see you. So
that's wonderful.
Highly
Thank
recommend.
You for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for who you are. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for being here.
You and the way you work, and you've been really healing for me in these short sessions that we had, and I just feel really grateful to have you here. So thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Jennifer.
We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you are loving what we are bringing to the table on this podcast, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts as we can continue to reach and help other people. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll see you next time.